article, so we were wondering what cause of that might be. And our other question was, we'd love to get your take on why you think that the son who doesn't know how to ask a question is depicted as a Chalutz or a pioneer.
I think the explanation that I've heard, and I tend to believe we've discussed this when Claire and I were visiting with the collectors who were talking about this, that the pioneer is the modern Jewish man, the liberal, he knows nothing about Judaism. He knows nothing about the religion. He doesn't even know how to ask about it because he's so modern that he's lost all of that knowledge.
Amanda, did you read specifically that it's a reference to a pioneer, or that's just your interpretation?
I think it's my interpretation, and I think
It's a
it might
common
have
one.
come up in discussion beforehand.
Yeah. I mean, to me, I would think like maybe it's Polish, like Polish laborer
Could be
kind
too,
of
yeah.
figure. But it's definitely that kind of like physical labor.
Yeah. And it's the same way that the Chalutzim are represented in other images and other pages, that it's more obviously a pioneer. So I think either interpretation is right, but it's kind of this idea of just not having the basic knowledge or experience to know how to ask. And why they look different? My guess would be because they were done, same reason why maybe we have a cutout. He was working through different things. Pages were done, at slightly different times, a year apart. I was trying to look through all of the pages and see if there were any recurring characters, if I could recognize any faces. And I haven't, but maybe you will, maybe you care, maybe you don't, I don't know.
Isn't the guy in the white shirt who's off in up at the top?
Yeah, the Irv traces this guy, a few different.
I think there are kind of archetypes, but I don't know if there are any portraits. Maybe that's...
We were also noticing in the Moses one when the slave and then the Moses look like they're almost the same character in the top and then the bottom.
We're heading over to this case where we're still talking about overt references. We were lucky enough to borrow from yet another private collection this printer's proof of the 4 questions, where you can see Irv's theories supported. That if you look up in this top right corner, the snake does indeed have swastikas running down its back. And unfortunately, you can see the color has been destroyed. This is a family heirloom. It was a prized possession. It's hand-signed and dedicated by Arthur Szyk, and it was up on someone's wall for too many years.
Which is why we have the light so low in the gallery,
Yes.
so it doesn't have to.
Exactly.
Can I just jump in here really quick?
Yes.
I want to just add and share with you that we have that proof as well as the Hitler as Pharaoh in a color copy as well, in a visual aid. So if you want to do a side-by-side comparison to the 4 questions page, you can hold it up and then look at the original. And then also if you want to look at some of the other Pharaoh depictions and hold up Hitler as Pharaoh. So those are 2 resources you'll have.
It shows the swastika.
And one from Irv's PowerPoint, yeah.
And then again, you can see this frontispiece for the Beaconsfield Press. The same paper, nice paper, artist paper, graph paper, while Szyk was in London with his supporters publishing the book. And then we have these letters here that you can see are in Szyk's own hand, and they're originally in French, but we've had them translated here side by side, where you can see that the quote that's pulled out, the Haggadah is the work of my life. I sacrificed many years of my work as well as all of my fortune. So we know how much Szyk was willing to give to this project. I think we can move on to more of the exhibition, the additional Haggadah, I can answer questions, I can point out more details, but I think that you've had a lot of exposure to the pages and to Szyk. Maybe if there's something from your own research you've noticed that you want to look at closely as a group. Yeah.
I had a question about the x-raying, because it said like a couple of them were x-rayed. I don't know anything about how much it costs or that process, so why haven't they all been x-rayed?
I think it can be damaging to the work. You don't want to x-ray too much. And my guess is that the ones that were x-rayed were ones where there was some other clue to point Irv in that direction.
And the story he told, if I remember correctly, is that it was part of an exhibit. I can't remember if it was something from which.
It was at the Holocaust Center in DC.
So it was because the exhibiting venue took it upon themselves to research the. So it kind of proved his theory, right? So I think it was in conjunction with an exhibition.
So it's like a major thing to be able to.
Yeah.
The show of his work that was in was it the DeYoung or the Palace?
The
a few
Palace,
years-
I think.
What showed there, so in case people say, oh, I saw this already, or.
I think it was mostly his political cartoon drawings.
Yeah.
And what about the Magnus? I know it was the Magnus too. Somebody asked me about that.
I don't know what was at the
So they
Magnus.
said, wasn't it at the Magnus? And I said,
This is definitely the first showing of all 48 pages.
well, if Szyk was at the
Right.
Magnus before.
Szyk has been the Legion of Honor. Right.
Okay.
But someone had a question about the Magnus. I mean,
Yeah, I think it was. It was at the Magnus.
Maybe.
but it wouldn't be complete.
Right.
And his work has been shown as part of group exhibitions. He's shown regularly. What's exciting about this show and important about this show is the focus on the Haggadah
And it's the first time all of them have been shown
in over 60 years.
in over 60.
And it's also just unique that they're all being shown, like, even from the perspective of the people that own the works. Like, the lenders really spoke about how this is a really unique event even for them, because when they look at the works, they see them one at a time. Because I don't know if you remember when those of you who saw them in art storage, they're in these matte portfolios. So you look at one, you put it aside, you look at another, you put it aside. So to be able to, even for the owners, to be able to see them all like this it's really unique.
And you start seeing connections. I've been spending the past week at the gallery looking at things, and I start to notice more and more. I was looking at this image of Moses striking the Egyptian, right next to this image, which I believe is Aaron. But the poses are the same, kind of these powerful, you have these figures mirroring each other. Again, I was curious about the Egyptian lore, and I have the note in my pocket because I can't remember the name, but I found that this Egyptian god here is Autumn, who is thought of as the first Egyptian god, the self-creator. He came out of nowhere to be basically the founder of Egypt, which here we have Moses and his heroic action of striking the Egyptian, starting the Exodus, this connection to a beginning, to a new people.
How do you spell that?
A-T-U-M. Sounds like Adam. Yeah. So I think, these are all things that I don't think anyone has pointed out or paid attention to, but if you're looking at these pages and you're questioning things, question away and find answers. This is why the show is up, so that people can look at them and spend time with them.
And if I can add to that also, remember when we asked Irv a bunch of questions and he's like, I'll buy you dinner if you know the answer. So I think we don't have complete answers to everything. So it's really an opportunity to like share the information we do know and to let visitors offer their own interpretations for the things that we don't know. And it's okay not to know every single detail because our curators don't, the like preeminent Szyk expert doesn't, and it's okay to have unanswered questions.
And that's also something to be said, the first time in over 60 years, no one's been looking at them. So no one can be doing this scholarship, so we all should contribute.
And questions are very tied into the Passover Seder.
Yes.
Is the phrase preeminent Szyk scholar the correct way to refer to
Oh, I just said that.
Sure.
I call him the local Szyk expert. I don't
The
know.
walking Szyk encyclopedia.
Okay. And does he prefer to be referred to as rabbi in like official capacity?
I don't think so. I think he's retired from his rabbinical duties at this point. So we also have this other side gallery if we're ready to move away from some of the Szyk images, or we can keep looking at them. Okay, let's go into the next gallery. Now I'm going to hand it over to Claire because she's done such a great job with this section.
So this is a large selection of Haggadot that is meant to kind of contextualize the Szyk Haggadah, especially for visitors who might not know what a Haggadah is, might not know anything about the history of the Haggadah. And, you know, there's a lot of amazing examples out there. So we've kind of roughly divided the selection into 3 groupings. On my right here is a selection of illuminated Haggadot. Oh, I should also note, there is glass covering the cases. They did a really good job cleaning it, so some people said, where's the glass? It's there. So over here is the selection of illuminated Haggadot. And these span from anywhere from the 18th through the 20th century. Some of the oldest examples are at the far end this way, which are from Stanford's special collections. In this case, we roughly align them based on basically to kind of like lead you through the Passover Seder itself. So here you'll see an image, an illustration of the order of the Seder. This is about the Seder plate, and then you'll see, you can make parallels with the works that are actually on the wall. So you see the rabbis at B'nai Brak in the Zev Rabban version, the 4 sons, and then I think that the 10 plagues is in the next one, and then potentially the Exodus in the final one. So that was kind of our logic in arranging these. But there's a wide range of artistic expression here, from the facsimile, the medieval facsimiles to contemporary stuff. Then on the far left are kind of the case of non-traditional Haggadot. So these are kind of divided roughly on this side of the case are the Haggadot from Israeli kibbutzim. And these are also from Stanford, and I love these, because they're all so different. The illustration style is different, the binding is different, but they're all, the kibbutz kind of, which you may or may not have talked about in your training, but they really took their own approach to Passover and the Seder because here they were actually in Jerusalem, in Israel, celebrating the Seder, and they were also very socialist, so they kind of took a much less religious approach. So I was actually looking at these with Elisheva Hurvich, who some of you may know, and she knows a lot about this, so she was commenting on the different structures, etc. And then on the far side of the case are like non-traditional Bay Area Haggadot. So, yes.
I didn't mean to interrupt you, but we see there's a Haggadah for the Israeli army, and it's got Szyk's illustrations.
Yes.
Can you tell us more about that?
Yes, definitely. So that's actually a Haggadah owned by Irvin Unger. But it's a great example of how the Szyk imagery has kind of been used again and again, and was often used kind of without much attribution, so people will recognize these illustrations but not know that that's an Arthur Szyk. So for example, this is the Haggadah that was used by the Israeli army.
But it's unillustrated inside.
Yeah,
So it's just the cover. Okay.
just the cover. So you know, it was very much just taken out of context, and you can see it's actually a blow up of the illustration that's on the freight elevator doors. So they also had the same idea of really zooming into the more detailed illustration.
Would he have received royalties for something like that, or did they just steal it?
It's
I
1960.
don't think he did, and that was kind of an
After
issue
he
for a
died.
while, especially with a couple of the copies of the Szyk Haggadah that are in that central case. There's one with a metal binding and one with a velvet that were like being produced in Israel, not really with any consideration towards royalties or copyright.
Which you can see a little bit reflected in one of the letters, that he's working towards publishing but not seeing a cent.
Those letters are heartbreaking.
They are.
Too bad we don't have the replies to put next, I mean. I read them, I got a feeling sad.
Yeah. Oh, and another interesting thing to note, sorry, this is jumping back to that case, but speaking of the letters which were to Cecil Roth, who is a well-known Jewish historian, he also wrote commentary for a number of other Haggadot, several of which are in that case. So he was very much involved, and he wrote the original commentary for it. And then on the far end of this case are kind of more Bay Area, non-traditional Jewish community Haggadot. So there's a lesbian Seder, a Passover Ramadan liberation Seder, several versions. And these ones, actually, we were lucky to be able to make photocopies of, to scan them and then print them, so you can actually, visitors can actually flip through them in the reading area in the back corner. But they're really interesting. There's a lot of interesting wording relating to the way people refer to God, the different types of prayers that are included, the singing, and the order of the Seder.
I have a question.
Yeah.
I thought that Ramadan was a Muslim holiday.
Yeah.
So how does Seder and Ramadan connect?
I think it's an example of a very inclusive view of the holiday and respecting the multiple traditions that people may be celebrating.
So that one's copied too?
Yes.
So I guess we can delve into it a little bit more and read it and see how they approached it.
We've scanned those, so we can also share the PDFs probably if you want to put them.
Yeah. And then in this central case is kind of like a selection of trade Haggadah, which actually come from Elisheva Hurwicz and also Sigal, who I think is here somewhere. And so they very generously shared with us some from their personal collection. These are I just think it's a great example of the wide variety that exists. So the scroll Haggadah was actually an El Al Airlines.
Is that yours?
Yeah. There's a little claymation Haggadah, as well as some more kind of non-traditional versions, a Chagall Haggadah, the new Haggadah, which was a reconstructionist Haggadah from the 1940s.
Which is a famous Israeli artist.
Right.
Yeah.
This is very new. Right?
Yes.
Yeah, that one just came out a couple of years ago.
Jonathan Safran for.
Yeah.
So it should also be clear, and you might get questions about how the selection was made and why this is not a comprehensive exhibition of Haggadah. And I think maybe the most concise answer would be, and Claire, you can weigh in, is that this is a way to localize this exhibition that we borrowed from local collections. We borrowed from Stanford, who has this great collection of Bay Area non-traditional Haggadah, and that it would really be pretty impossible to do a comprehensive exhibition because the Haggadah is so widely interpreted. So we just borrowed from our community to put together an example of what is out there.
Does anybody see the Maxwell House version?
It's
I thought that was it, I wasn't sure.
Yeah, I have a different cover too.
Yeah.
With Maxwell House.
Yeah. And I think that the relation to the community and this being kind of a reflection of our local community ties in very well with kind of like a theme of the Haggadah and a theme of the exhibition, which is that the Haggadah is a reflection of the time and the community in which and for which it was created. So here we're trying to focus on what's relevant to us in the Bay Area.
And I think what Claire just said is actually a great way to frame this exhibition, because we haven't talked a lot about these Haggadah because we haven't really been able to take a great look at them. So really not just thinking about Szyk's Haggadah, but thinking about Szyk's Haggadah as being an amazing example of that Haggadah specific to a place and time, and here are all these other examples. So for sure bring your visitors in here. I don't think you need to spend tons and tons of time, but I think this is a great way to conclude a tour.
Well, that also shows you how it develops over the years, over the centuries.
Yeah.
It changes. You start here with the oldest one.
Yeah, that's true. You could begin in this space.
And it's also exciting for visitors because I think, like all of you, you come in and you recognize different Haggadah and you maybe say, oh, well, I've seen that one, but mine didn't look like that. Or it's a good point of making the visitor comfortable and familiarizing themselves.
And let everyone know the story about the Maxwell.
I thought of a new question I have.
Sure.
So it's edited by Cecil Roth, right? And I think of editor in a contemporary context of like proofreading and making sure that like they got the right words into the right order and that no words were left out. But if Szyk was doing all of the lettering, presumably that was all set. So then does the editor become more like the publisher, or like?
He was writing the commentary, which this is always, you'll have to ask Irv about this because we, for our research, did not have access to the 1940 book, and Irv has never transcribed the original commentary, so we never got to see what it is. But I think Irv talks about how there is some unhappiness and some of the compromises between Szyk and Cecil Roth, that Szyk included a lot more mysticism in his text, and Roth took that out of the commentary. And so, I don't know. If you all ask Irv to see the commentary, maybe we can finally.
I'll ask him.
But you see the different editions, the different edited Haggadah also different from one to another, because if you change one word, it changes the whole thing. And that's what the editors did.
Right.
All along here.
Right.
Other questions? I want to make sure we have a volunteer to model a tour stop. It's not me. It's not me. It's not me. So I just want to make sure that we have a chance to ask Lily and Claire anything else that we want to ask before we move on to that piece.
I have a general question about the Maxwell House. Why did Maxwell House?
Advertising.
You want me to tell you?
Can you hear Seagal telling us to?
No, you're not right. Yeah, I have a very
Yes, you do.
So the
Wait, we've got two people trying to talk at the same time. Maybe you and Cara can tag team it.
I was just going to say that it was actually the best advertising in history. It was sorry, I can recall it. They in 1923 they had Maxwell House hired this company called Jacob's Company, and they came up with this idea to market it to Jews because coffee was thought not to be kosher, because it was thought to be a bean. and beans aren't kosher on Passover, but it's not a bean, it's actually a fruit. And so they had the chief rabbi say, it's actually a fruit, it's kosher, I will texture Maxwell House coffee. And so they started marketing as a way to get Jews to buy coffee on Passover. They marketed this Haggadah as a freebie, so if you bought the coffee, you got the Haggadah too. And it became the largest advertising marketing strategy in history.
Which is still
55
being
million
used.
people.
Correct.
55 million copies.
Last year, 55 million.
It's out of print now though, right?
No,
You
it's
go to
still-
safe, you still get it?
Still in there.
Where?
Maxwell House still.
You see it in the store?
They give it to
Longest
I have to
running
buy
sales
Maxwell House
promotion in
coffee
history.
you. It's a long promotion.
It's not the
No other
kosher, it's the
questions?
chametz.
No expiration date.
No, it's not about the kosher, it's about the coffee, because the beans were considered to be legumes, and legumes are chametz in Passover. That's why it wasn't used. Once it was decided it's not legumes, it's regular beans, then you can use it on Passover. You didn't have to pack it and put it away, and the Jews in New York weren't all kosher, so.
Is it that it's beans or that it's fruit?
It's fruit, it's not legumes.
Why are lagoons not
Legumes in Western Europe were considered chametz because when the women went to get it from the field, they thought that they also get other things that might be chametz for Passover. It's only the Ashkenazim, it's not the Sephardim.
So it's more of a Sephardic issue?
It's the Ashkenazi problem.
Peanuts. Okay, other questions? We could talk about kosher for Passover in like 6 weeks. I feel like now we have to have a CJM tour guide Passover Seder. But other questions about the exhibit?
Oh, we should also mention, we are doing a handout. It was not ready in time for the opening, but it will be a poster, like a broadside, which is how they advertised books and different events in Szyk's time in the 30s and 40s. So we're using that idea as inspiration to do a CJM Passover guide. But it will definitely be available in the galleries for Passover, but we haven't decided if it will be available before that.
And it has some of the images for Szyk pulled
Yes.
out, so like it'll be really graphic.
Yes, we're seeing how quickly we can get it designed.
So do any royalties accrue to a Szyk estate?
There is the Arthur Szyk Society, and they control all of the copyright. So, of course, they're being incredibly generous to us in using all of the images, but when someone else wants to use an image now, they go to the society for copyright permission.
And does the daughter, he had left a daughter, right?
Yes.
And where does she live?
She lives somewhere on the East Coast. That's all I know.
Is it going to be on this wall?
No.
Will there be anything that will add to his political cartoons that we can kind of reference in context of what he did as an artist outside of the job?
You have I made about 10 different visual aids that have both his political cartoons and his Americana. So you'll have those as supplemental materials. Yeah, I want to just also acknowledge Frankie and Chloe because they have been busy and they've been like not exactly using their intern brains to the fullest potential. They've been doing like a lot of copying, a lot of laminating, a lot of binder sleeving. And you have so many visual aids for this exhibition, so thank you.
Thank you.
And in regard to visual aids, we did try to bring magnifying glasses into the exhibition for everyone. Okay, so you've heard. It's too bad.
Just need reading.
Yes.
I have a technical question. Do you know how long Szyk worked on each page? I mean,
They're dated. The date would be the date of completion. And as far as we can tell, he worked pretty quickly. So we don't know how long, but he was also working on a bunch of things at once. You'll see a lot of the pages have the same date. Probably not that long. That's the best answer I can give.
Yeah, like days or weeks or?
There is kind of an image of him working that video in his studio, but it doesn't show much. I would guess weeks to months. So, but that's a total speculation.
Do we have any pictures of the kinds of paintbrushes?
Irvin actually has his paintbrushes, so maybe, yes, if you, when he does come back, you may want to request that he bring his Arthur Szyk toolbox.
Are there any, like, studies? I mean, I think there's a few studies, but not necessarily for the Haggadah. You know, he must have done a lot of preparation for each piece. To just like sketches, go at each one seems kind of.
I think my guess, looking at the materials I've seen, is that he just sketched directly once he figured out. I mean, you see here on these pages that they're very similar. He worked out the formal qualities. He was thinking about the style in advance. But once he was ready to go, I think he just went right onto the page. And like I said before, he didn't have a lot of means. So I think when he found his page, he was ready to just do it.
Reference material.
We know he looked at a lot of artwork. He came from a privileged upper middle class family. He spent time in museums. I'm sure he was studying books at certain points in his life.
And he probably had a lot of art history.
He had a lot of art history, sure. And you can see some subtle, you know, plays with perspective. This Exodus image is actually really similar to Italian Renaissance paintings of the coming of the Magi's. And you can see this perspective from coming off in the distance and coming to the front. That was used a lot. So he was familiar with these different techniques and really, I think, just internalized them.
And pretty much self-taught in terms of the art of illustration,
Yes.
of illumination.
Yes. He looked at a lot of things. Other questions? Now, could I get to watch you all tour?
So we have access, we know where to find Lily and Claire if we have
Yes.
more questions, and hopefully we'll be able to bring Irv back here, but thank you, it looks really beautiful. It feels very intimate.
Yeah.
And
please share your discoveries too. Don't just be in touch to ask questions, but yes.
Please share yours about the gods.
I will.
Did you guys frame it for the exhibition?
Yes.
so it's Jenny Mang.